Citizens of the United States, I have a confession to make. I once believed I was African American. I was born in 1991 in southern Dallas, Texas, zip codes 75215 and 75216. I was raised by my great-grandmother, Bessie Mae Price. I was told I was African American. I accepted that title without question. I believed it was my identity. I believed it was my destiny. I later believed I was black. In early adulthood, I shifted from African American to black. I adopted the language of militancy. I embraced the politics of identity. I believed I was asserting my power. I believed I was claiming my liberation. And I was still trapped in the optical delusion. I accepted a title I knew nothing about as my identity. A fraudulent title created by someone who had never met me or my ancestors. A title created by people who built the fiction of race to justify their exploitation of millions. I was caught in the cognitive dissonance of my own American mind. The contradictions began to tug at me. The torrential tugging of the contradictions within my American mind began to rock my psyche to a point where I had to take executive, cognitive action. I wanted to know what black really meant. What did it mean to be black? Was it biology? Was it culture? Was it history? Was it politics? Was it identity? I wanted to know what white really meant. What did it mean to be white? Was it biology? Was it culture? Was it history? Was it politics? Was it identity? I wanted to know what Asian really meant. What did it mean to be Asian? Was it biology? Was it culture? Was it history? Was it politics? Was it identity? I wanted to know what Native American really meant. What did it mean to be Native American? Was it biology? Was it culture? Was it history? Was it politics? Was it identity? Was it sovereignty? I wanted to know what all the boxes really meant. The rabbit hole led me to discover the identifiable architects in the architectural structure of racial classification, and therefore racism itself. Imagine the inundation of my anterior cingulate cortex with the downpours of cognitive dissonance. The anterior cingulate cortex is the part of the brain that detects conflict. It is the part that registers when something is wrong. It is the part that triggers the discomfort of cognitive dissonance. My anterior cingulate cortex was drowning. It was registering the conflict between what I had been taught and what I was discovering. It was registering the conflict between my identity and the truth. It was registering the conflict between fiction and the evidence. Imagine the inundation of my insula with the downpours of cognitive dissonance. The insula is the part of the brain that registers visceral emotion. It is the part that feels the discomfort of cognitive dissonance in the body. It is the part that triggers the physical sensation of unease, anxiety, and distress. My insula was flooding. I felt the dissonance in my gut. I felt the dissonance in my chest. I felt the dissonance in my throat. The fiction was being exposed, and my body was registering the exposure. Imagine the inundation of my prefrontal cortex with the downpours of cognitive dissonance. The prefrontal cortex is the part of the brain that integrates information, makes decisions, and guides behavior. It is the part that processes complex information and resolves conflicts. It is the part that helps you choose between competing options. My prefrontal cortex was overwhelmed. The evidence was piling up. The contradictions were multiplying. The cognitive dissonance was intensifying. I had to do something. I had to take executive, cognitive action. I had to resolve the conflict. I had to know the truth. I discovered that race is a fiction. I discovered that the categories were invented between 1758 and 1920 by identifiable architects, Linnaeus, Kant, Blumenbach, Morton, Gobineau, Grant, Stoddard. I discovered that the categories had no biological basis, that 93% of human genetic variation exists within populations, not between them. I discovered that the categories were codified by bureaucrats in 1977 for administrative convenience, and that the authors admitted that they were not intended to be based on anthropological or scientific grounds. I discovered that the categories have been changed 28 times since 1790 because they are not real, because they are arbitrary, because they are political. I discovered that I had accepted a fraudulent title created by someone who had never met me or my ancestors. I discovered that I had been caught in the optical delusion. I discovered that the jig was up. Imagine what occurred in my American mind as I began to observe quietly. The American mind is the mind that has been shaped by the promise of the Constitution. It is the mind that has been shaped by the Declaration of Independence. It is the mind that has been shaped by the struggle for equality. It is the mind that has been shaped by the pursuit of justice. My American mind began to observe quietly. It observed the architects of the fiction. It observed the bureaucrats who codified the fiction. It observed the institutions that perpetuate the fiction. It observed the people who profit from the fiction. My American mind began to observe the evidence. It observed the genetic evidence. It observed the anthropological evidence. It observed the historical evidence. It observed the clinical evidence. It observed the economic evidence. It observed the constitutional evidence. My American mind began to see the pattern. I saw that the fiction is a Ponzi scheme. I saw that the fiction is an optical delusion. It saw that the fiction is a prison. It saw that the fiction is a disease. My American mind began to spot the target. Imagine how I felt as the wings of my American mind climbed the thermal currents seeking a solution. The thermal currents are the currents of evidence, of reason, of justice. The American mind climbs them, seeking a solution, seeking clarity, seeking the truth. The climb was not easy. It required confronting the cognitive dissonance. It required letting go of the comfortable fiction. It required embracing the uncomfortable truth. The climb was necessary. The fiction could not be allowed to persist. The Ponzi scheme had to be exposed. The optical delusion had to be shattered. The prison had to be opened. The disease had to be cured. The climb was worth it. Imagine how I felt when my American mind spotted the target, the premise of the fiction itself. The target was the fiction itself. The premise was that race is real. The premise was that the categories are meaningful. The premise was that your identity is your destiny. The target was the Ponzi scheme. The target was the optical delusion. The target was the prison. The target was the disease. The target was the box. Imagine what occurred when the wings of my American mind folded. The folding of the wings became inevitable. Clarity was reached in altitude. The path, the screaming of the wind became a joyful descent. The folding of the wings is the decision to act. It is the decision to abandon the comfort of the fiction for the clarity of the truth. It is the decision to refuse to check the box. It is the decision to demand the abolition of racial classification. It is the decision to join the coalition for Amendment XXVIII. The folding of the wings is the execution order. The folding of the wings is the moment when the evidence is submitted. The folding of the wings is the moment when the path is mapped. The folding of the wings is the moment when the only question is whether we have the will to act. The screaming of the wind became a joyful descent. The descent was not a fall. It was a flight. It was a flight toward clarity, toward justice, toward fulfillment of the promise. It was a flight toward posterity. This is not just for us. This is for our posterity. Not the posterity of certain boxes, not the posterity of white or black or Asian or Native American, not the posterity of identity politics, not the posterity of division and extraction, the posterity of the United States of America. The posterity of the nation that was conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. The posterity of the nation that has struggled to fulfill its promise. The posterity of the nation that is still struggling to become what it claims to be. Our posterity deserves a world without the fiction. A world where they do not have to check a box. A world where they are not defined by a category. A world where they are judged by their character, not by the color of their skin. Our posterity deserves the Caldwell model, a world of universal pre-K, universal health care, permanent child allowances, geographically targeted investment, school funding equalization, affordable housing, justice reform, and land and capital justice. Our posterity deserves the bridge to justice. Citizens of the United States, I know the evidence and the truth surrounding it can be difficult to accept. I know because I struggle to accept it myself. I believed I was African American. I believed I was black. I accepted a fraudulent title created by someone who had never met me or my ancestors. I know the cognitive dissonance is real. I know the discomfort is real. I know the struggle is real. I also know the clarity is real. I know the freedom is real. I know the joy is real. I know the jig is up. The evidence is clear. The path is mapped. The only question is whether we have the will to act. I ask you to join the coalition for Amendment 28. I ask you to refuse to check the box. I ask you to climb the thermal currents of your American mind. I ask you to fold your wings and descend with joyful clarity. I ask you to build the bridge to justice for our posterity. For the posterity of the United States of America, I await your verdict.